Good morning, good evening, or good night. Again, I want to welcome you, whatever time you're joining. It's always a privilege to have you online. This today will be a continuation of the story that was started in Genesis chapter 18, which was the last chapter that we delved into. If you remember Genesis chapter 18, God met with his friend Abraham. There's a discussion about will he or will not he destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of the wickedness that was in the city. Today we're now going to go into chapter 19, which starts off by saying, "And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot seeing them rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground." If you remember when Abraham started in 18, his hospitality was shown. Abraham had seen 3 people come in, and not knowing, he bid them come on, and he called his wife to prepare a meal. Here you see that part of the culture apparently had to do with hospitality, because Lot here now sitting at the gate, and the story talks about the fact that wise men or people of upstanding status in the community, they would be the one who were found in the gate. He was there, and here you had 2 strangers that were coming in. Lot saw them, and he bid them to come on to him. And he said, "Behold now," in verse 2, "my lords, turn in, I pray you, unto your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and he shall rise up early and go on your ways." And they said, "Nay, but we will abide in the street all night." Lot didn't have any idea of what the purpose of these men, but he realized that they were strangers. He also knew the society in which he was living, and so for their own protection, he said, "Listen, come on and stay, abide with me. And in the morning when you have rest and refreshed yourself, you can now go on your way." The men said, "No, we had intended to stay on the streets all night." Verse 3, "And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat." Again, that hospitality. The Bible in these stories are telling us how we should relate to strangers, telling us of what of our purpose is. And so here it talks about that, he fed them, told them to wash their feet, be comfortable. Mikasa, sukasa. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. They didn't come in unawares. Apparently they were spotted, they were visitors. And so it says that here it is, the men of the city came and encompassed the house. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, "Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them." Now, if you know what the Bible means when it says know them, it's not just to come and reason together. This is actually talking about knowing them as a man knows his wife. Now, I want you to just picture with me how disgusting, for want of a better word, that situation would be. And it says that both young and old, all of them seeing these men, and it's not something that is unthought of. There are many cities here in the United States. There are many cities in Jamaica where, for want of a better description, you cannot do the same thing that these men had said they were going to do. Stay out on the streets. Because there would be an abuse, whether it be criminal abuse as far as somebody attacking you, or it could even be a scenario like this where people would rape you. There was a time when women were afraid, but I tell you, we live in a day and age where even men have to be afraid. The men came and they said, "Send out these men." I've heard people giving testimony of going to prison. And especially in those prisons where they harbor the most dangerous of criminals. You find that rape is commonly practiced. You go in incarcerated for a crime. And when you come out, you're mentally distressed. You find that there's psychological problems. Why? Because you go in, you were new meat. And the men there being harbored by the same spirit that was in the land of Sodom ended up doing the same thing that these men were intending to do. It says, and Lot now went out at the door unto them and shut the door after him and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known men. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye unto them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. So as you look at the story, you get the picture that as Lot saw these men coming, and knowing the character of the place that he was living, he quickly tried to shelter these men. He brought them into his home, figuring that there would be some security. And that's not uncommon. Even today, there are places that I know of where it's very dangerous. But if it comes to a point where you're visiting and you know someone there, the people around, even though they're extremely dangerous, they will give you a pass because you're going to someone who is within their grounds, within their camp. Here it is. The men said, no, they will not accept what Lot was asking them to do. Lot said, listen, I have 2 daughters, and that's something that's even difficult to understand, but it just goes to show you how debased these men were. Man said, I have 2 daughters, 2 virgin daughters. They have not known men, and I will give you those 2 daughters. Just don't do what you're intending to do to these men. Bible speaks about how when the devil takes on control, that even the natural affections to woman, something that should be natural, you will end up losing. We will show unnatural affections. We'll do things that don't make any sense. And so it is. They said, nah. They said, stand back in verse 9. And they said again, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be judged. Now will he deal worse? We will deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. You see, Lot was not from there, and that's a lesson in and of itself. Try not to find yourself in places that you don't belong. Try not to fit in where God did not place you. If you remember the story of Lot, it started off by saying, no, Abraham said, listen, Lot, you can choose. If you go this way, I will go that way. When Lot looked around and he saw the beautiful plains and he saw the city, it's like, you're in a place and here it is, you have the night lights, Las Vegas, for instance. And when you look at it and all the things happening, all the shows, you said, you know what, I'm a Christian. I don't want to go all the way in, but I don't mind being on the outskirts. I don't mind visiting and having some fun. You know what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And so Lot's intention was not to find himself in the city, but he said, I will go in the plains near to Sodom. But you find that one of the things with evil is that it slowly draws you in. The glamour, the highlights, the happenings. And so over time, Lot was there in the city. It mentioned also that he was judged because he was a righteous man. Remember this question that Abraham asked, will you destroy the righteous with the unrighteous? One of the other things that you should take from this is that regardless of what your influence is, if God was not the one to place you in certain position, do your best to stay out of all harms and danger. Do your best to not put yourself or place yourself in a position where you can be tempted. And so you find at the end of the journey, when the question was asked, if there is 10 found, will you destroy? The answer was, there wasn't even 10 found in Sodom that had learned about the God that Lot served. Remember, Lot left with his uncle, being directed by God. Verse 10, and the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them. Now, this is not the men on the outside. This was the men who Lot was trying to save. They are now saving Lot. They pulled him in and shut the door. Verse 11, and they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. A miracle was done. The men were blinded. They couldn't see. And so there they are going around, pouncing around. They could not find the door. And the men said unto Lot, haste thou here, and besides, it's actually correction. It says, hast thou here any besides son-in-law and thy sons and thy daughters? And whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. The men questioned him. He said, listen, do you have any other connections, any close ones? Whatever you have, bring them out of the city. Sons-in-laws, daughters. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. We're going to finish here, and we'll continue the next time with the story of Lot. But one of the things I want you to take away at the closing here is that Lot went to his daughters and their husbands. And when they were told the intention of what God had planned to do, rather than believe, they mocked. They probably thought he was crazy. Now, I suspect if those daughters were not married to unbelievers, they would have been part of those who moved to be saved. I want you to consider this of your own household. God is coming soon. What is your influence? I tell mine, as long as they're within my roof, they have to do certain things. Of course, when they're outside of my roof, I have no much more control. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what will happen in the end? You got to train them today for them to live how they should tomorrow. God bless.